Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. So the entire Caitlin Clark situation is mud. It is mud. That's all I'm going to say. It is mud all around. We know what's happening. Alyssa Thomas has now been suspended. And yeah, this picture looks pretty bad. We can be very clear about that. This picture still looks really bad. 24-hour, whatever the hell it is later. Doesn't look any better. Does not look any better. Kelly Kraskoff has responded, finally has responded. Everything at The Athletic, Mercury, Alyssa Thomas, suspended 1 game. Player safety should be paramount in our league. We appreciate the WNBA's review of last night's incident and the action taken. Right now, our focus is on Caitlin and our entire team as we prepare for Saturday. Kelly Kraskoff, team president, Indiana Fever. So yeah, that was Kelly Kraskoff, and I think her statement is significant because this is one of the few times we've seen someone at that level of the Indiana Fever organization publicly address everything surrounding Caitlin Clark. When you combine that with everything that happened during the game and afterward, it definitely gets people talking. As far as Caitlin Clark playing in the next game, I still think the odds are greater than 50%. I've said it before, and I still stand by it. From everything we've heard, it sounded like this wasn't a situation where she simply couldn't continue. She went back to the locker room for the second time. She was dealing with some quad discomfort along with a little bit of back soreness, and the coaching staff probably looked at the situation and decided there was no reason to force it. If you're already dealing with multiple minor injuries during a long season, sometimes the smartest decision is just to sit the rest of the game rather than risk making something worse. At the end of the day, if you're carrying an injury, there's no reason to gamble with your franchise player. You protect her health first because the season is much bigger than 1 game. Meanwhile, The Athletic reported that they reached out to the Phoenix Mercury for comment and would update the story if the organization responded. Whether they choose to respond or not, the discussion surrounding this incident isn't going away anytime soon. Fans are still debating the play, the officiating, and the league's response. Then you have Kelly Kraskoff stepping forward publicly. That's important because people wanted to hear something from Indiana's leadership. Her statement wasn't long, but it carried weight. When she said, player safety should be paramount in our league, she was sending a message without having to say much else. Some people have compared the Indiana Fever organization to major brands because of Caitlin Clark's popularity, but the reality is much simpler. The Fever are in the position they're in largely because they drafted Caitlin Clark. Before that, they also made important decisions by selecting Kelsey Mitchell in 2018 and later drafting Aaliyah Boston. Those players helped build the foundation, but there's no denying that Caitlin Clark has changed the spotlight surrounding the franchise. Sometimes people forget how much luck plays a role in professional sports. If the lottery balls had bounced differently and the Phoenix Mercury had landed the #1 overall pick, instead, the entire landscape of the WNBA might look different today. Maybe Caitlin Clark is wearing a different jersey. Maybe another franchise becomes the center of attention. That's simply how lottery locks work. Instead, Indiana won that opportunity, and now the organization has a responsibility to protect its biggest star. Behind the scenes, I have no reason to doubt Caitlin Clark when she has spoken positively about the people around her. By all accounts, the coaching staff and those inside the organization have supported her throughout the season. But public support also matters because fans pay attention to what executives, coaches, and league officials choose to say after controversial situations. That's why Kelly Kraskoff's statement matters. She emphasized player safety, and many people interpreted that as acknowledging that what happened involving Alyssa Thomas crossed a line. Whether someone agrees with that interpretation or not, the wording certainly placed the focus on protecting players moving forward. When an organization's president publicly says player safety should be the priority, it naturally raises questions about whether enough was done during the game itself. That's become a major talking point among fans. From the league's perspective, consistency is always important. Players want to know that dangerous plays will be reviewed fairly and handled appropriately, regardless of who is involved. Another comparison people continue bringing up involves Sophie Cunningham and J.C. Sheldon. Those situations are viewed differently by many observers because retaliation between two players during the flow of a game isn't necessarily the same as contact involving a player who is already on the floor and unable to defend herself. Personally, if Sophie Cunningham had been suspended after her incident involving J.C. Sheldon, I don't think many people would have been shocked. There was contact between both players during the game, and emotions were clearly running high. J.C. Sheldon had earlier been involved in physical plays against both Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham, which is why many fans viewed that exchange differently. The bigger discussion has centered on Alyssa Thomas. The images and replays have fueled debate across social media, television, and sports websites. Regardless of where someone stands, the optics became a huge story almost immediately. Another point that continues to come up is the officiating. Many people believe that if the referees had assessed a flagrant 2 and ejected Alyssa Thomas during the game, much of the conversation afterward might have been different. The post-game comments from Stephanie White, the league's review might have been viewed differently, and many of the headlines that followed may never have become as big as they did. Instead, because that immediate decision wasn't made on the floor, the controversy continued long after the final buzzer. Fans questioned the officials, debated the league's disciplinary process, and continued discussing whether the punishment matched the incident. So when Kelly Krauskopf finally spoke publicly, her comments became another major part of the story. Even though her statement was brief, it reinforced that the Indiana Fever want player safety to remain the priority, while the focus stays on Caitlin Clark and the team's preparation moving forward. At this point, everyone is waiting to see whether Caitlin Clark returns to the court fully healthy. But one thing is clear, this entire situation has sparked one of the biggest conversations around the WNBA this season, and it's probably not ending anytime soon.
Folks can't stop talking about Caitlin Clark. You don't know to ride that wave? You don't know to be mindful and cognizant of that reality and go forward from there? You don't know that? Don't you want to make money? What you don't do is have such a disdain and a disregard for her that her coach is complaining about intentional harm being aimed in her direction because of the resentment that she fuels. Rising tide lifts all boats. You think Magic Johnson and Larry Bird wanted to concede the reins to Michael Jordan? I'm not comparing Caitlin Clark to Jordan in terms of her ability, even though she's pretty damn good. I'm comparing her to him as it pertains to her box office appeal for her respective sport. She's that girl. You ride that wave. You want to beat Caitlin Clark? Beat her playing basketball. Don't beat her with roughhouse tactics. Compromising her ability to play, because if she ain't playing, it's going to affect ratings. And if it's affecting ratings, it's going to affect revenue. And if it's going to affect revenue, then you're not going to build the sport the way you hope to build the sport. That's the reality. Let's all grow up and accept it for what it is.